Hello, this is Jesse Marshall. Welcome back to my Gagarin Midrange deck series. Here with a game number 6, playing against Leela Patel. So this hand is not perfect against Leela, but I think it's going to be okay. No, we're going to mulligan. We can't really afford to go for trying to score the Oaktown on turn 1. This hand's worse, but that's okay. Yeah, we can't really afford to go for scoring the Oaktown on turn 1 against Leela because of Siphon. Caduceus on HQ is reasonably good, and I think we'll save the Ice Wall for trying to score the Oaktown next turn. So for now, we'll just gain some credits, try and get the public support online, and then hopefully go for the Oaktown next turn if we can. The danger with Leela and trying to force through an agenda early is that you can lose your face down ice if they manage to rip on off R&D. So depending on what we draw next turn, we might try and protect R&D as well, and also try and protect the public support. I mean, yeah, this is not a great matchup for a deck that's trying to rush out agendas early. With the power of Leela is that she can punish you for trying to do that, because any place that you leave unprotected, if she's trying to race you, or rather if you're trying to race her, she has a tool that's going to allow her to race you right back, which is bouncing your face down cards, whether it's face down ice or face down advanced cards. So a Dirty Laundry here is not going to allow our opponent to trash our public support at this point, and they're going to have to lose a credit to access, which is kind of good. So if they want to go back in, it's going to cost them another 5, so it will have been 6 in total, and the Dirty Laundry is actually only gaining them 2. So that's not too bad at all. Getting as many hits off our ID as possible is good. So the Dirty Laundry is getting them 5, and Leela has put out a Katie Jones. So again, I'll try and keep up. I know I've got this graphics card glitch, unfortunately, but when I do mouse over cards, the correct card appears in the top right-hand corner of the screen. So you can see what's going on here. And all the cards in my hand as well. So before we start the turn, we'll raise the public support. So no ice, and okay, so Katie has 3 credits on her. So I think if we protect the public support at this point, that's probably good, because then even if an agenda gets ripped off R&D, we're only losing the protection on the public support, and then we're back in the same place we were. Whereas if we try and use the Ice Wall to protect an agenda, and the same thing happens, we're actually giving up points. And that also allows us to then play out an unprotected pad. This isn't ideal, having pads out if Leela is playing bank job economy, but we're just going to hope that that's not the case, because we can't really afford to just sort of not do anything in terms of remote servers and give that up just on the odd chance that there's going to be some remote server punishment in the Leela deck. So first click is going to be gain a credit. Second click's inside job on the public support. Not the end of the world. And again, another reason why it's good against criminals not to go trying to score out agendas early behind single pieces of ice. So if we can draw a couple more ice in the next couple of turns, then we'll be able to protect R&D, put a second ice on server 1. That'll be good. So six credits for Leela. Before we start the turn, remember to raise the pad. And we've got a quandary. So I think now, with a quandary, we can try and rush out this Oaktown. And if there is an agenda on top of R&D and it's stolen, Leela's still going to have either another inside job or the correct icebreaker to get past the other one of these, or a Siphon, of course, for HQ. But then between running R&D, siphoning us, and then removing the 2 tags, Leela's either going to have to float a tag or not steal the Oaktown on that turn. So that wouldn't be all that bad for us, considering we've got a Scorched Earth and she's sitting on 3 cards. So 6 credits now. Do we want to res the Quandary or the Ice Wall? I think probably the Quandary. It's more expensive generally for Crims to play Code Gate Breakers. So we had draw a card, Katie Jones, and run. So I don't think we're going to be losing the Oaktown this turn. And we've got to run an R&D now. See what happens. So none of our face down cards are particularly worrisome at this point. It wouldn't be particularly worrisome to lose any of our face down cards, that is. So 3 to stretch Jackson. So we've got away with it. And we have a bit of a choice here. We can play out the Quandary onto R&D and leave the Oaktown down for another turn, try and leverage some more credits out of it. I'm not actually terribly averse to that idea. We're not going to be losing agendas from anywhere else. And even if there is an inside job, there's going to have to be a Corroder as well. No credits on the Katie Jones. So that's looking like it's going to be reasonably difficult for Leela to manage. And this way we can leverage our Oaktown, depending on what we draw next turn, into some more credits, or we could even, depending on what Leela does this turn, advance the Oaktown one more time and then install advance the NAPD to try and push through the next couple of points again. So a couple of draws. So, I mean, you can see here the tempo hit that's happened as a result of Leela having to trash our public support. So that being a real must trash and having such a narrow window for the runner within which the runner can effectively interact with it. Alright, gang sign's a little annoying, but then our opponents left themselves on 2 credits, so it's not that much of a problem. Even if she manages to snipe the NAPD, she's not going to be able to steal it. I think that being the case, we'll try and score out these agendas as quickly as we can while we've got less in hand. If we're facing a sort of gang sign HQ interface deal, then I think this is going to work out much better. The quicker the better in terms of our scoring. So a Scorched Earth and a Caduceus sitting in our hand. And a decent amount of economy. Okay, so we've lost our R&D ice to Leela's ability. Obviously that was sitting there for a little while. So I probably could have waited and seen what she bounced before installing and advancing the NAPD. Could have potentially waited another turn, but that's okay. It's the slight disadvantage of playing with online interfaces. Sometimes those things can happen in a strange order. Thankfully, we've gotten away with it again, and there's no agenda on top of R&D, so we should be able to score out this NAPD. Corroder not going to get Leela past our Quandary, thankfully. And given the fact that Leela is sitting so low on credits, I think it's important for us to shore up HQ before we score out our NAPD, because we don't want to lose the Caduceus and leave HQ unprotected. So I want, actually, I think, to advance this so that whatever is bounced next turn when we score it, we still have the click to reinstall. I want to put the Caduceus on R&D because against zero link runners, I do like having Caduceus on the centrals. So now we've got one on HQ and one on R&D. And then we'll put the Quandary on HQ. I do like having the Spiderweb on remotes. And having a Quandary now lower res cost, and also Crim Code Gate Breakers can be difficult to find. So if it's Yogg, which is a little bit unconventional these days for Leela, then that's going to be a big investment. If it's Zul, it's going to be a lower investment. I mean, Zul's probably the best answer at this point. And if it's Passport, again, a reasonably low investment. But nonetheless, Leela spent that turn setting up her board. So we've got inside job access now, and potentially on an ongoing basis, somewhat of a siphon train that we could see heading our way. So we can score out the NAPD and see what happens. We'll wait to see what happens with bounces. So we've got an NAPD and an Oaktown scored, and our 3 cards in hand. We've got a couple of ice and now a 3rd ice returning from R&D. So we can just pop that ice back onto R&D. So now we've got Caduceus on both R&D and HQ, and then the extra Quandary. And we've got the Quandary Ice Wall sitting on their remote. So I feel like we're in a pretty reasonable position. Ice Wall's not doing a whole lot with the Corroder out, but the Quandary's still looking reasonably good. And if we can get that Spiderweb onto the remote as well, that's going to be a reasonably taxing remote. If we can get an Ash in there, I'd be pretty confident of us being able to score out most agendas. So our opponent hasn't started their turn as yet. Perhaps, no, they did access the card from HQ. They saw the Scorched Earth. Perhaps some sort of latency issues here. I'll just give this a moment. Alright, so Earthrise triggers at the start of the turn. 2 cards for Leela. She goes up to 5 cards in hand. And nothing as yet for the first click. Let's see. So, as we saw, battery died there for a second. Not a problem. Not a problem. All rectified now. Katie's got no charges, which is good for us. Same old thing's got the inside job and the dirty laundry. Dirty laundry, probably not the sort of thing you want to be playing with. Same old thing. Spending 2 clicks to gain 3 credits, not as a one-off, not a great ability. Earthrise Hotel, 2 counters left, and only the Corroder there. Was there ice going R&D? No, you did that, but I had 1 click left, so I reinstalled it. Yeah, so I mean, yep, okay, no problem. Yeah, so for the Leela player, probably used to her opponents scoring agendas on the last click, as court players generally do, but thankfully, due to our board position, we were able to leave the NAPD and the Oaktown both for an extra turn, which was good. And that was, as we covered earlier, thanks to the tempo hit that our opponent took from trashing the public support early on. So Silencer comes down now, indicating that there's a stealth suite in this Leela deck. So Miramati could be a good one to put on HQ, but I think it's difficult. We don't really want to be going into capital investors mode at this point. But we do need a little bit of economy. I'm going to draw just to see if we can find another agenda. I'll draw again. So we've just got a whole lot of ice. So it's a difficult one because the sort of ice we have in this deck as compared to the economy of the Leela deck, we have a window in the next few turns within which we can score agendas because of the upfront cost of the icebreakers and the cost to break into our servers and access cards being too high. But as the game progresses, particularly with the stealth suite, it's going to become more and more efficient. So we can't really afford for the game to progress to that point. I mean, it's bad enough for most corps anyway if the game goes long. But I think we really want to close this one out as quickly as possible. Preferably with a global food initiative, but even just with another 2-pointer into a public support. And if we do delay and just go for a credit lead, KD, Siphon, particularly Siphon is just going to go over the top of us because our ice is not going to keep the runner out permanently. That is, of course, this sort of matchup is one of the big advantages of having the Scorched Earth package in your deck. Because if the runner does go for the Siphon Train, try and keep you low, use that as a really swingy effect, you can punish them. So if your server is taxing them more than 6 credits, then they're effectively not gaining money, they're just damaging your tempo because they have to clear the tags using the remaining 4. So we'll see what we draw here before we go into Capital Investors mode. So none of this ice, now we've got Zool out, none of this ice is going to be particularly effective at protecting the Capital Investors, but given how poor our opponent is, really any of this ice is going to do a decent job, particularly Spiderweb, but then Spiderweb's going to require more investment from us. So I think just adding the extra 1 from Corota plus the doubt that that'll, the extra 1 from Ice Wall, plus the doubt that that'll place in our opponent's mind about whether or not to go there, is going to be good enough. And we'll just spend a turn, possibly a couple of turns here, developing our money. And then after that, I really want to get a Spiderweb onto HQ and a Spiderweb onto the remote, and hopefully then we can draw into an Ash and an agenda, or at least an agenda. Or possibly the other pieces for our Scorched Earth combo. If we can hit Sea Sauce and another Scorched Earth in the next couple of turns, that would also be nice. So our opponent spoiled for choice at this point with so many cards in hand, 7 cards in their group, and just got 28 cards left in the stack, indicating that at this point there's probably at least 1 Siphon that she's got at her disposal, but no credits to get into our HQ. So over the next couple of turns, as we see that Switchblade come down, which our opponent has special ordered for, we're going to be needing to increase the cost of getting into this server, into HQ, somewhat in line with the resources that she's going to be gaining. So we've got 9 credits at the moment. If we go up a little bit more, discarding an Au revoir, that's interesting. I'll run another special order. So I think, well, that's interesting. Public support's a good draw for us here because it's going to turn on the archers, provide us a way to use some money, save our credits in the case that we do get siphoned. So we've now got 4, 7, 8, 10. That's all our credits that we can spend if we get siphoned, leaving us with nothing but with a fully developed HQ, a public support online, and a Capital Investors also still online. And that's only something that we'll have to do if our opponent uses Katie Jones or she invests a little bit more in the run itself by gaining credits. So feeling pretty good about this turn in particular and the next couple of turns. And having the public support ticking down means that we're contributing to our score. We're contributing to our remote in the long run because it's going to mean we can place archers there without having to forfeit our 2-pointers. And it's going to give us the freedom to be able to use spend our clicks on Capital Investors without worrying too much about losing that tempo and that long game reach. So public support really playing a dual role there as either points or food for Archer. Corporate Town also wouldn't be a bad one in this game. If we can slot it into the server after the public support's run its course, we can get rid of some pretty valuable resources for our opponent. However, we now have a global food initiative, and I think doing a similar thing, gaining some credits and putting the spider web on the remote. Putting ice on remotes is always going to telegraph a little bit to your opponent that you've got an agenda coming, but she might think that we are just wanting to protect our public support. So this sort of situation is not the worst one in which to be installing a third ice on your remote. And again, it keeps our credits down to a manageable level. So she's used Katie to gain 6 and sure gambled and is now dirty laundering on R&D. So we're going to have to, our opponent's going to have to spend a Ghost Runner credit if she wants to break our R&D ice. So hopefully we can whittle down those Ghost Runner credits over the next few turns and get it to the point where even getting into R&D is going to be a little, into HQ is going to be a little bit difficult. Yep, okay. So again, we'll hope that there's no agenda on top. No. So the economy of the Leela deck is well and truly operational now. We're drawing the hedge fund. We might, I might consider adding another ice to the capital investors, but I think at this point we've got the public support coming next turn. We're probably going to lose the capital investors next turn. So I want to really get that wave of credits as high as possible so we can hopefully ride that to victory. We've also now got the hedge fund as well in hand, which is going to be useful. So of course we've abandoned the plan now of trying to stay, right on our number of credits to res HQ ice, because I think we're going to have to probably defend multiple servers this turn. I'm assuming we're going to see a run on the public support. But you never know. So we still haven't seen a Siphon. It looks like our opponent hasn't drawn any yet, because I've gone down very low, unless one of those last couple of cards was a Siphon. But once the Siphon train starts, it's going to be a long one with two same old things in play. So in terms of runs on HQ, yeah, we can afford to start resing this stuff now. Spiderweb's going to be a decent chunk to get past. We don't want to get legworked. We don't want to lose that global food initiative out of hand. But thankfully this isn't a legwork. It's just a normal run. So we can try and just place a little tax on our opponent on the way through. And again, with the limitation of stealth credits, that Switchblade is going to have a hard time breaking through these Caduceus on the central servers repeatedly. Mimic probably realistically a much better answer than Switchblade. To Caduceus. And we're also soaking up those stealth credits that fuel the Switchblade, because Switchblade is of course a much better answer to Archer than any other Sentry Breaker. So if we can try and soak them up, then we can hopefully land an Archer at some point later. So fingers crossed, don't steal the Global Food Initiative. Okay, we lost the Global Food Initiative. That's unfortunate. However, given the amount of credits that our opponent just lost, I think she's going to have a hard time coming in again if we put another ice there next turn. So if we can draw an NAPD and another ice, we might be able to defend that server, the remote server. -1 point, because Global Food Initiative's points are of course not coded yet. So the public support's now gone to our score area, and our opponent's got 2 points from the Global Food Initiative. So we've got public support, NAPD, and Oak Town sitting in the score area, and we've just drawn the Archer. There is still one Ghost Runner credit, but it's just one of the D&D cards that isn't implemented yet. I'm sure it will be soon. We can put the Archer on the remote. We can put the Spider on HQ. We've got a range of options. Given that we don't have an agenda this turn, I don't think we really want to rush into trying to dig for one before we've really shored up these servers. So I'm going to hedge funds. I'm going to put the Merimati on HQ just because it's so much better value there than anywhere else. And if we're going to use it, we might as well use it there. You know, it's 3 to break for Kuroda. And that's turning that server, you know, it's above that 6 credit level, where a Siphon is actually a net gain, and it's turning Siphon into something that's only going to be about denying us credits rather than gaining them for our opponent, which makes any remote plan much, much safer. I think that the chances of us taxing our opponent out with Spiderweb is actually much higher than with Archer. Given that it's going to cost her 3 no matter what to get through the Spiderweb with the Breaker Suite that we've seen, assuming no parasites. Whereas with Archer, we could tax out this Ghost Runner credit and she could fail to draw any others. But as soon as she draws another Ghost Runner, the plan of taxing with Archer is really just out the window. There's a Ghost Runner, 2 same old things, a Gang Sign and a Katie Jones, and then a Logos. Logos, I don't think going to be terribly relevant in this game. I mean, sorry, I should mention about the ice choice there as well. Spiderweb not requiring us to forfeit the public support, so that if we do score another 2-pointer, you know, Logos is not going to be relevant, and we're going to have just scored our 6th and 7th point. No, it doesn't. So public support doesn't count for Logos because it's not actually a score. It's added to our agenda area. To my agenda area rather than scored. Yeah, it's a very, very fine distinction. You can see the wording on public support. When there are no power counters left, add it to your score area as an agenda worth 1 agenda point. So it sort of becomes an agenda once it's already there, rather than being scored, which is what agendas are able to do, or what you're able to do with agendas. And Logos reads whenever the corp scores an agenda. So we haven't scored an agenda, we just added a public support to our score area. Ghost Runner, allowing our opponent to get past that Caduceus and get into R&D. So now, I mean, look, we could put the Archer onto R&D just on the off chance that our opponent runs there again now that they've got no silencer credits, but no Ghost Runner credits, but that seems unlikely because why would they run into the Caduceus unless they had Ghost Runner credits? And I think putting it... Okay, so stolen the NAPD, that is most unfortunate. I think at this point we have to start looking for the agenda. So 1, what do we got? Spiderweb Quandary, 3 credits on Katie. You know what? I think we're going to go for it. It's going to have to be take money off Katie, gain a credit, sure gamble, run. That's a very specific sequence of events that's going to have to happen here for us not to be able to score this. So the first one down, that's not a good sign. Three from Katie. Gain a credit. Oh dear. Inside job. That's absolutely fine with us. Yeah, look, we'll res this to tax out the extra credit from Quandary because I think our opponent's going to pay 1 and then also they will pay the 1 to access. We're getting the credit from pad. We've got plenty to score out the NEPD. So it's not terribly relevant, but thankfully with only 1 click remaining, we hopefully can't lose off R&D. Going to be a struggle for our opponent to get in there. Yeah, I mean, they'd have to have a Maker's Eye. They can't afford to play Maker's Eye. They can't afford to get past Caduceus. So we should be pretty safe here. That was a lucky draw on that NAPD there. I mean, we knew what we were looking for, and we found it. So that's great news. That was a good game. Very, very close. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you're enjoying this series of exhibition matches, if you like, with the Gagarin Midrange deck. And I look forward to seeing you for our next game. So thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for supporting the Winning Agenda. If you would like to chuck some more support our way, you can head along to patreon.com and search for The Winning Agenda. We appreciate any support you're able to give. Otherwise, we look forward to hearing from you on Twitter, Facebook, or by email. Thanks a lot, guys. Speak to you soon.